Hello and welcome to the Cannon Sports Podcast. I am your host, Ryan from Cannon Sports, and joining me today, live from the campus of JSerra in Orange County, we have baseball coach Brett Kaye. Coach Kaye, thanks so much for being on the show.
Excited to be here. This is a special, sweet little setup you got going. So,
Thanks, man. Yeah, we do what we can. So, Coach Kaye, you've been here at JSerra as the head baseball coach since 2006. In that time, you have won 5 Trinity League titles. You have been to the CIF playoffs 12 times, won the 2021 Southern California Regional Championship, and were also named the 2009 Orange County Coach of the Year.
Correct.
Awesome, man. So let's start from the start. Coach Kaye, where are you from?
Born in Long Beach, raised in Orange, California, then moved to Villa Park. And then, but then went to Cal State Fullerton, went to Modern Day, obviously during Villa Park time, and then played baseball at Cal State Fullerton. Then I signed with the New York Mets. I was an 8th-round draft pick out of Fullerton. Played my first year with Brooklyn Cyclones, so I lived in Chelsea in New York. And then I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, Port St. Lucie, Florida, and then back home to get started on life.
There you go, man. So when you were growing up, born in Long Beach and then spent the first part of your childhood in Orange?
Yes.
What sports did you play when you were growing up?
Baseball, a lot of basketball. The flag football leagues didn't really exist then. So it was mostly baseball, basketball. Most of my youth was those two sports. My dad played in the NFL. And I always wanted to get into football, and I ended up getting into that my freshman year in high school. But it was mostly basketball and baseball.
Mostly basketball, baseball. Now, at what point did you decide baseball was going to be your game?
That's a really good question. I went into my high school Modern Day playing all three. So I played basketball, baseball, football. I remember going to the youth camps and going to football, then basketball and baseball, and wanting to do the same in high school. And I alluded to this earlier when you were here. My biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life, was stop playing basketball and to stop playing football and just to focus on baseball. I knew baseball was my passion, but egotistically, I felt like I had something to offer from a basketball perspective and from a football perspective. So even to this day, I like to tell our student athletes and our parents that play as many sports as you can for as long as you can. I know it's a different day and age than 1994. And finances and, time and distractions and things like that of that nature. But again, it's something that I dearly miss, and I'm obviously a big fan of to this day, football and basketball.
Yeah, and like we were talking about a little bit before we started rolling, I mean, it does seem like more and more kind of the days of the multi-sport athlete are kind of behind us. But even me growing up, I played everything and I really enjoyed it. What did you feel like you would have gained or did gain from playing multiple sports when you were younger?
I think you look at, it helps the total athlete. And I'm not throwing student in there because it takes away a little bit from the student part of it, because your time management has to be really balanced. And when you're a youth, you don't really have cares in the world, right? You're just playing all these sports and doing all these different things. And, but it's actually molding you to what you want to potentially be. And then when you get to high school, there's so many people in this day and age that say, hey, you have to do this. You had talked about you played water polo. Well, you need a swim coach and you need a throws coach and you need this, you need a strength coach. And you're seeing that in a lot of sports. It's not only sport specific, but it's position specific, and it's getting more detailed, and the games are evolving and it's getting more analytical. So a lot of that stuff looks sexy from a parent point of view. Like, okay, well, if I want my son to be this, then these are the things that he's going to have to do. Where I always love, hearing college recruiters for football, they want to recruit the multiple sport athlete because they're going to help you in other sports. I want to see a water polo player play baseball in the spring and vice versa. Because I think it helps balance you out. I think it helps you out from a friend load. So you don't get too cliquey in the high school realm, which is something that's very, runs rampant kind of, I think, in the high school setting. But it overall helps your resume when you want to go to an Ivy League or a Stanford or UCLA or Vanderbilt or wherever that may be. And it just creates so much more from a communicational standpoint about your body and who you are as a student athlete.
Yeah. Now you brought up your dad earlier, Rick Kaye, who played at the University of Colorado and then went on to play with the Rams and the Falcons. So that's an experience that I would say most of us don't have. What was it like growing up with a professional athlete for a father?
Well, I wasn't born yet. So he had played through 72 through 77. And I was born in 79. So, and he had passed away in 1998 when I was a senior. So when I was young, we would go to Cal State Fullerton where the Rams used to hold their mini camp or their training camp. And, some of the players would know who he was. And, I didn't know what that meant at that time. And, it's funny because we would go back and me and my brother and I and my family would try to find old films of him playing with the Rams or playing with the Falcons or playing at University of Colorado. And that's something I always aspired to be, was a professional athlete. So the fact that my dad did it was obviously very, very near and dear to me and special because that world was something that he had gone through. Granted, it was in the 70s, which is a different time. And it was something I still hang on to this day about, the meaning of the life he lived and the things that he did and what type of athlete he was. And I like to think that those are things that were passed down to me and that I can pass them down to my children.
Yeah, amazing. Now, you brought up that you went to Mater Dei, and once you got to Mater Dei, you pretty much were focusing on baseball. What was your position in baseball, and what kind of a player were you?
Even better question. So I've always been a catcher. But I was a catcher on JV my freshman year, and one of my better friends, still to this day, was Ryan Leinert, who's Matt Leinert's brother, was kind of like my mentor. And so when I made varsity as a sophomore, I was an outfielder. Coach Ikes had moved me to center field because we had a senior catcher named Ryan Blackman who just destroyed baseballs. And so I was playing center. Ryan Leinert would play, right, and we had really good teams. And then my junior and senior years, I moved to catcher. Catching was something I started to do at the age of 12. And I had Bob Boone as kind of my catching coach because I'd grown up with Matt Boone, and he kind of got me into the spirit of that position. And I just fell in love with catching. I think you see the game from a different angle. I think, it's the vision. It's knowing what everybody's supposed to do. It's leadership on the field. It's communicative things. It's, they make good managers. They make good coaches. They've got this toughness about them. And I'm not saying that about me. I'm just saying that about them. They've got this toughness about them that they see the world, see the game differently. And that's something that always excited me because if you look at it, a shortstop's got a single view, a third baseman, and so on and so forth. They have their own views of the game itself. So I always enjoyed the catcher being a part of it and being part of the action. And, people all the time say, well, baseball's boring. Go be a catcher.
Yeah.
Then tell me if it's boring.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super fun. I'm not trying to compare at all. I mean, I played Little League, but when I played Little League, I played up until I played Little League in the majors for the Reds at Upland Flowers Field. What's up? But I always liked catching because I felt that, you're talking about the game being boring. But for me as a catcher, when I was playing as a kid, it was always fun because I was involved with every throw, every sign, even if it was just a ball, like I was catching the ball, I was throwing it back and trying to read it. So if being a catcher does have to give you a very interesting perspective on the whole game because you don't get to take a single pitch off.
And also the game from a catching perspective, and I said this the other day, it's the most undercoached position. Now in the Twitter world and the Instagram world, we talked about position specific. You're starting to see a lot of catching coaches and their expertise being spread out and their knowledge being spread out throughout the country. So it's very unique to watch to where I'm kind of an old hand at this. I have an old school way. So I'm looking at these guys who are younger than me or have new knowledge and like, hey, how can I do that? Teach me how to do this. And it's hard to give up yourself in a lot of areas of coaching. But at the same token, it's like you want a wealth of knowledge to be spread to you so you can teach it to your student athletes and your kids and figure out, and I always talk about gold pan the information, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and how to navigate the world. But it takes a special type of human to put on the gear. They call it tools of ignorance for a reason.
Now, out of Mater Dei, I have it down that you were drafted in 1998 by the Astros. chose instead to go to Cal State Fullerton. What was that like being drafted out of high school? What was the decision that you made to go to Fullerton? Fullerton, of course, a college baseball powerhouse. But was that a tough decision to make, and what all kind of went into that?
I remember I was supposed to go on my senior trip. I was supposed to go to Hawaii with all my friends, and the draft was at the same time. And there was a lot of rumors of me getting drafted like the third to fifth round. And I'm like, wow, this is unique. I got an opportunity to be a professional athlete. And then I got drafted in the 35th round for whatever the reasons were. Probably because my attitude stunk and my body language stunk. And I had Cal State Fullerton in my back pocket. By far and away the best decision I ever made, because it's I wouldn't say catapulted, but what Hookie and Serrano and Bomber and Kirby and Coach Horton meant to me at that point in my life. Now, granted, my dad had passed away in that summer on September 3rd of 98, and so I was mentally just not all there. I didn't go to Fullerton my first semester. I went to a JC. I had a job working for a surveyor company. I was eating off roach coaches. I just wasn't in a good place of my life, and I needed guys like some mentors that I've had, my high school coach, Bob Spohr, and then Hookie and Horton. And when I got there, I thought, I didn't know the level of what this play was going to be. And it took me a full year to figure out if I'm going to make it or if I'm not going to make it, or really get out of this, downward spiral that I was in. And I played a little bit. I got 15 at bats. My freshman year, I was 2 for 15. I broke a toilet at UNLV. And I don't think I ever played again that year.
Yeah.
And it was, they taught me a lot, not only about the game, but perseverance, life, patience. And then sophomore year, there was 2 other catchers that were really good, Craig Patterson, Jeff Gates. And I played a little bit. I think I hit like 280 or 290 with 4 home runs. And and then my junior year, it's my turn. It's my chance. And I started off great, doing great things, and I broke my thumb in the middle of the year. And, here I am thinking I let my team down, I let myself down, I let my family down. And, lo and behold, the Fullerton way, they go 13-3 in those games that I was out. And come back, we make a run to Omaha. We eventually lose to, who did we lose to? Stanford twice, I believe. Mm. But Fullerton was the best thing for me. Coach Horton, Serrano, and Hookie, the nuances and the details and the things they teach you about the game now are so intuitive. And it's old school because it's the old Wally Kincaid days of Cerritos, and you should see that coaching tree. It's really unique. But a lot of what they taught me, I'm still using to this day. Mm. And I think that's kind of the West Coast style of play, which a lot of people don't like to see, but I'm going to teach our kids to play any type of baseball game in any type of environment against any type of opponent, and be able to attack those weaknesses and to teach our players how to kind of overcome, obstacles, and to read scouting reports and to break down players and to break down teams. And I one of the many that have played for the Titans that I just cannot be fortunate enough to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Now going to Fullerton, as a player, what was that jump in competition like for you? And you're a guy that had a lot of success in high school. At Mater Dei, I believe you were named an All-American in 97 and 98. Moving into the college landscape, what was the difference that you saw in terms of the level of competition and the jump that you had to make to kind of succeed at that level?
Well, and this, again, I feel like I didn't fail much in high school. I did, obviously. Baseball's a game of failure. But the best pitcher I'd seen in high school was Rick Courier, who went on to USC and had the filthiest slider I think I'd ever seen up until the point. I hadn't seen that pitch before. And I felt, me and a teammate of mine named Pat Manning and, the other guys that we had played with, we just, when we were Mater Dei, we were surrounded by great players. So not only we felt that we were good individually, but our team was really good. And I knew that going into Fullerton, but I was a little bit too conceited. I had been knocked off my perch with my dad's passing, and so mentally I was kind of a midget when it comes to that. And I just didn't feel I was ready for all this information. I was really struggling with it. I was struggling with the fact that here I am, I'm an All-American, right? Like I should be playing, and it wasn't at that point. I knew I needed to work harder and I needed to figure out a way to combat this because I hadn't been through this before. I guess patience is a virtue. My mom taught me at a young age, and in this day and age, I could have got up and transferred, and now I'm going to go to do the next best thing. But sticking it out and staying there, that was always the option. There was no other option of ever leaving. I'm not a big believer in that. But you started to see the guys like Mark Pryor. You caught a guy like Kirk Sarlos. I'd seen in the showcase world, which was really small at that point in time during high school, what players looked like. And then you'd see whole teams of it, the USCs, the UCLAs, and playing against guys like Chase Utley or the aforementioned Mark Pryor, and you're seeing the best players in the world and the best college teams and the Stanfords and things like that. But we at Fullerton, when we walked on the field, we felt we were going to beat you, and we stretched like we were going to beat you, and we talked like we were going to beat you, and we played catch like we were going to beat you. We had that aura about us. It didn't matter how many prospects or how many draft picks you had on your team. We were just going to out-hustle, out-play, out-smart, out-tough, do all those things within a 9-inning game. And I wanted to be a part of that. And that was the most important piece of the things that we saw. The speed of the game was, as you grow older, it slows down a little bit, and you learn how to slow it down by the, Ken Revisas of the world and the people that can help you really persevere during this course of college. And so for me, that was so many teachable moments, year 1 through year 3 through college. And that's what I take away the most, because it didn't matter what we saw. It was more about the matter what we did and what we could accomplish as a unit.
Yeah. And by the sound of it, I mean, by the end of your time at Fullerton, you really had got it. In 2001, you were given all Big West Conference honors. And then in the 2001 draft, as you were saying earlier, you were taken by the Mets. You talked a little bit about what it was like to get drafted in the 35th round in 1998. Moving up to 2001 after all the experience that you had at Fullerton to then get drafted at the Mets, what was that moment like for you?
I remember the day. I mean, I was disappointed because I felt like I should have got drafted higher. All my buddies, we were drafted all on the same day. Aaron Rifkin was drafted by the Yankees in the 4th round. Murph Norris was the 9th round of the Expos at the time. Dave Bacani went. He actually went to the Mets. Kirk Sarlos, I think, was a supplemental pick. So a lot of our guys were getting drafted. Mike Rouse was a 6th rounder or a 4th rounder by the Indians. So it was really cool. The transition was, and I still get a lot of crap because I just signed. I forgot to kind of tell my coaches, hey, I'm signing, I'm leaving. So I was supposed to work a youth camp for the Titans, and I was on a plane to New York, and Hookie ended up finding out anyways. But I remember being ready. I didn't necessarily want to go back. I kind of majored in socializing and girls, I would say, which was to no one's fault but my own. I just finished my degree, like 3 years ago. So that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
But I remember being ready and having an opportunity to play for the Brooklyn Cyclones, being an 8th rounder, knowing they drafted another catcher as a 7th rounder and sending him to Kingsport, Tennessee, which was kind of a rung below Brooklyn. And I got an opportunity to live in a studio in Chelsea, in Manhattan, like right next to a Whole Foods, and be on MTV TRL Live with, Carson Daly, Harper's Bazaar magazine shoot with Spike Lee and a bunch of models. And we would have 8,000 people, at a minor league game, a meaningless, short season A, and some of the best experiences of my life, meeting some of the greatest people, Dave Campanero, who was their media publicity guy. We were treated like kings. We really were. And on top of it, we made great friendships. We won a championship, a co-championship, because we were all there during September 11th, and a lot of us saw it actually happen in front of our eyes. But what a phenomenal experience. And, the transition from metal to wood, I actually felt like I could do this. I had a great year. I think I hit 311 with like 6 home runs or 5 home runs and 20 RBIs and in our stint. And, I felt like, okay, hey, I can do this. I can play at this level. I've got a chance to, hopefully go through this ladder. So that first year and that junior year combined with going to, Omaha was really a special one for me personally. And then obviously from an athletic standpoint.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when we talk about baseball specifically. I mean, I other sports, there's the G League, you can make a practice squad in the NFL, but there's not a lot of comparable sports to baseball in terms of the minor league system. What was it like coming up in that? So you played 3 years with the Brooklyn Cyclones, and then you also played a season with the St. Lucie Mets?
So the first year was Brooklyn Cyclones, and then we'd go to a mini camp or instructional league in the fall, and then you go back to St. Lucie for spring training. You find out where you're going to be put. So I skipped a level. So it would have gone Brooklyn to the Columbia Bombers to Port St. Lucie. So I went to high A instead of middle A. And so I was there for almost half a season. Then I got dropped down to middle A, and then I finished up in high A. So I bounced around a little bit after that. I remember, my first month and a half in jumping that level that I was, again, on a right, really trajectory to, I'm going to big league camp. I'm playing catch with Mike Piazza. He's my locker mate, and Mo Vaughn's with me, and Tom Glavine, and all these guys, and I'm not thinking I made it, but I'm like, this is really unique and really, really cool. And then after that 2-month period, I started to fail. And again, going back to the not knowing how to deal with failure, I didn't know how to deal with it. So I got dropped down a level. And there was a really good prospect that the Mets had that named Justin Huber, who was a catcher at that time, who was crushing. So I go down, and now I'm not playing every day, and he's playing. And so I didn't know how to handle that. That was really a unique time. And then so the guy on this shoulder and the guy on this shoulder started to kind of get in my head and be like, is this something you really want to do? And so obviously I went back for that third year and went to St. Lucie, and I rotated with, 2 to 3 other catchers, and I went back to big league camp and had a great experience. But I was starting to feel the effects of, call it politics, if you will, and that I had failed myself and I had failed my family and the people around me. And that hit home hard. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at that time. So it was really difficult for me. And thinking back on it, when I ended up making the decision to stop playing, I was 100% sold on it. And I don't regret it. The only thing I regret is failing myself and failing my family and the people around me, because, you get asked the question at times. I think I still have people that send me my baseball cards that want me to sign them. And get the whole penny for it. Yeah. But that's the only thing that upsets me, is that it's not myself. It's just the people around me that helped me get so far. And the question, do you think you could have been a big leaguer? And I think I could have, if I would have stuck it out and had a chance. But I knew I wanted to get started on real life. And that decision has led me to ultimately where I am today. So that's the reason why I don't regret it.
Absolutely. Now, when you talk about wanting to get started on real life, at what point did coaching enter your mind as something you might want to do?
That 2003 year, we won the Florida State League Championship at, Dunedin, where the Blue Jays were. And I remember celebrating at that time, and I wasn't really in a celebratory mood because I had some visions of some things that I wanted to do in my life. I kind of knew that, hey, this has got a chance to be it. And so I knew I wanted to be a coach. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to do it. Didn't even know how to get started. So that led to the process of me starting to get into coaching. So that off season, I put in a application to go coach at this place called The Yard in Irvine, which is give private lessons and do different things. And I got asked to coach, through a travel ball team, create one really called the Blue Wave. And so my job was tasked to go out and kind of find these kids to come play for your team, these 12-year-olds that were going to be 13. So I did that really in 2004 and 2005. And so here I am coaching 12-year-olds and 12 to 13 and then 14-year-olds. And I had been asked to be like the freshman coach at Mater Dei or be the freshman coach at Woodbridge, where my high school coach now was as an assistant. I actually had interviewed for 2 head coaching jobs, one at Bolsa Grande in Garden Grove. And if people hear this publicly, they'll probably get a kick out of that. And the other one was Beckman. Beckman was a brand new high school. And I feel like it's in a really great area of Irvine, Tustin. And I got told no both times. One of them I was the finalist for. One of them I had zero, had our high school coaching experience. And then on a whim, I get, one of my lessons kids that I was doing as parents had come in, hey, do you have any interest in coaching high school? He says, yeah, of course. I'd love to do that. And so I went and interviewed down at Capo Valley Christian, which is about a mile down the street. And I got the job. I got the job in January. Season starts in a month. You have a month to get these kids ready. I had 14 kids in the program. 12 had played baseball. 2 had not. So I had hired one of my parents at the time to be my assistant coaches, whose son is Austin Hedges, who was, one of the best players we've ever had here. And so Charlie and I are coaching these teams of 14 kids, and we went 17-5, and I won Academy League Coach of the Year, and we lost in the second round of the playoffs. But I remember writing down when I was done playing, and I actually still have it. It's in my folder. It was 4 a.m, 3 a.m, because I used to be a huge insomniac. My vision. Here's my vision. Here's the things I want to accomplish. Here's all the plays I want to run. Here's all this stuff that I want to do. And I went back to that after that game where we had lost. I'm like, I can do this. I can, and I had committed to go back to Capo Valley Christian in the summer of 2006. And then the story of JSerra unfolds.
Now, how did you end up at JSerra?
Okay, so I'm going to give you the story. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to...
You got as much time as you want, man.
Because I'm going to give it to you guys. So when I was at CVCS, we had played St. Margaret's, which is right down the street. It's a very affluent, great school. But their head baseball coach at the time was a gentleman named Joe DeMarco. And Joe is still one of my friends to this day. He gives lessons to my son. He's a really good hitting guy. He works with Matt Chapman, Austin Hedges, the McLean brothers, a lot of really good baseball players. And this job had opened. So JSerra was in Division 5 in 2006. They were 19-10. They were a freelance school, and they didn't get in the CIF playoffs. The head coach before me had left. I won't get into specifics of that. And so it was open. And Joe had referred me, because I'd coached against him and beat him at St. Margaret's, referred me to really Scott Boras. Mm-hmm. And if you know the name Scott Boras, it's obviously a pretty magical name. And so I have to build my resume, and I'm telling Charlie, who's a life coach and has coached a lot of, pretty prominent people, hey, can you put my resume together? Can you help me with this? I have to go meet Scott Boras up at Dodger Stadium. And if you know where Scott sits, he sits right behind home plate, and, So I remember going up there, here's your ticket, walking in there, meet with Scott, meet kind of all his, coworkers that work with him, Fiore and Champ and a lot of these guys. And I remember him pulling out a red pen and, just knocking off my resume. Well, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. So, and now he sets me up for the interview. I go and interview, and I interview with the AD at the time. And I'm going to get into that story too. So I get a call back. The AD shows me around the campus. I'm like, wow, this place is unbelievable. I knew I wanted to coach in a place like this that was going into Division I, or the Trinity League, if you will. And so I get a call back later that day after he gives me the tour, and he asked me the question, why do you want to come to JSerra? I was prepared for 30, and so I was kind of taken off guard. I didn't get the job. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bummed out a little bit. Hey, I'm going to go back to CVCS. I had great kids, great experience. So I tell Scott this, and, he says, well, you didn't get a chance to meet with the principal. So I go back for a second round of interviews. This is now with the principal and the AD. And I remember I was on the toll road up in Santa Margarita, getting the call from the principal. You didn't get the job. So by this time, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just curious, what did I do? What did I say? Right. And Tom, who's now the principal at St. Edward's, he was the principal here, I think, my first 5 or 6 years. Great man. And he had said, gosh, you were really, call it conceited that you could feel like you can coach with the likes of Mater Dei and Santa Margarita, and, you feel like you could beat those schools and create, I just don't think we're there yet, et cetera. And I'm like, oh, okay, totally cool. So I go back to Scott again. I go, hey, Scott, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your help. You've been a huge advocate for me. Hey, this is a great relationship to have. Obviously, I don't want to burn that bridge. So I get a call back again that I didn't get a chance to go meet with the coaches panel. So I go back for a third interview. I'm basically Red in Shawshank Redemption when he's in his last parole hearing, and he's just like, screw it. And that's kind of how I felt. And so at that time, those coaches forwarded me back to the AD. And what I didn't know at the time was that the AD was basically going to bring in his own guy. So he had his own guy that wanted to be the head coach. And the AD had come from Long Beach State, and he had been the head softball coach there for 20 so odd years. And obviously a great man, because I ended up marrying his daughter. And again I'll get to that story. So I go and interview, and they forward me to him. So I get the call, and I'm sitting at the Yard, which is that facility that I was doing lessons, and I get this job. Yeah, you got the job. And I could tell he was upset. He wasn't happy, and he had every right to not be happy. I wasn't his guy. And here I am as a 26-year-old kid, with a vision and a plan, but really I had coached 1 year of high school baseball, and very fortunate for Scott for really being on my side and kind of pushing me, and him not knowing me either, just on a referral from Joe. So I get the job, and I remember, I still have the first email that was sent out, by our booster president. They called me Brett, and then they called me David, and David Kaye and David Kaye, and so I met with every player in the program and their parents, and just wanted to get a feel. And I'll get into it a little bit more, but I wasn't supposed to last past the first year. Mm-hmm. There's some high-profile gentlemen that were done coaching that were going to be the JSerra head coach. And so I had to go through basically that whole year and try to change the culture and change how, throw my vision out to these parents and these kids. And we started to see a little bit of success. We went 11-15 that year. We went 6-9 in league. We swept Servite. We beat SM 2 out of 3. We beat Bosco once. We got swept by Olu, and we got swept by Mater Dei. But the last game of the year, we're 6-8, and we have bases loaded and one out, and we have a chance to go to playoffs. And we're facing, Aaron Gates and Garrett Cole and Brandon Maurer. 2 of those guys have been big leaguers. And we hit into a 3-2-3 double play, which is, I said this in the thing a couple weeks ago. It's like the only 3-2-3 double play that I've seen in my 16 years here. Yeah. But I remember losing that game and being devastated and knowing that, this is it. This is probably the end of my JSerra career. But knowing that I felt like we had accomplished so much, and that if given the chance, the direction and the trajectory of this program I could hopefully change it. And I surrounded myself, because I only think you're as good as your staff. So I surrounded myself with, I had Charlie Hedges come follow me. I hired my hitting coach, who was my hitting coach at Mater Dei. I tried to hire my high school coach, who's now on board after 16 years this year. And I just had, and Damon Summers, who's one of the best teachers on our campus, and just an outstanding coach and an outstanding person. So I surrounded myself with good people. And I remember the conversation. I was on a George Foreman grill in my apartment in Santa Margarita when I told I would have a second year. And yeah, but all those rumors that you heard were true. And our founder at the time, Mark Spazzeri, is still very near and dear to my heart. And one of my, guys that I still talk to this day, was telling me about what was going to happen to me. So that was kind of the transition. And I apologize for being long-winded into, Capo Valley Christian to JSerra, the kind of politics behind everything, and just being lucky enough to land this job. And here I am 16 years later.
Yeah, and no apologies for being long-winded. I mean, that's what the podcast is here for. So you get the second year, an amazing story of how you got it. Scott Boras, and then not wanting to give it to you, Red, in the third round of interviews and everything. But you're here. One of the things you said that was maybe a knock against you in the second interview is that you were maybe dreaming too big, that the school didn't think you guys were ready to compete basically in the Trinity League yet. So your first year is 2006. You're not sure if you're going to get your second year. You get in your second year, and then by 2009, you guys win the Trinity League. When you talk about the culture that you wanted to change, and when you talk about the plan that you had in your head, what was that culture shift, and how did you get, the guys on board to a place where you're winning the Trinity League by your third year at JSerra?
Well, it was a lot. It was toughness. I remember my first year, and I don't know what I'm allowed and not allowed to say on this podcast, but
anything you want.
I took a trip up to watch our football team play, and I remember coming back to my car, and it had been keyed and Sharpied all over it. And basically planners have been thrown over that, and, F Coach Kaye, and, statements thrown on it that were hurtful, and that is what needed to be weeded out of our program. The negativity, the spirit of competition, having a purpose, having a vision. putting them in a position to be successful, teaching them different components of the game. And you started to see some of that fall off because I wasn't going to play the politics game. I know we're in a South County environment, an affluent school, an affluent area, and I didn't want to play that game. I wanted, ultimately the reason why I think I was done playing baseball because it wasn't fun for me anymore. So I wanted to make it fun, but I wanted them to understand what type of fun is. Fun isn't screwing around and, acting a certain way when you're beating a team or losing a team in the dugout. Fun is, running hard 90s and going first to third and going ball in the dirt and bunting and skills and hitting home run, doing all these. That's fun for me. And so that's what we wanted to teach our boys. So in 2008, we had some milestone victories. We had beat Mater Dei for the first time. And Mater Dei was this juggernaut. And I remember, Rourke Anderson, one of our left-handed pitchers, giving him the ball to go back on the mound and striking out 2-3 and us beating them 2-1. We had two transfers come in that kind of helped our pitching staff course load. And so we had made the playoffs. We were the third place team. And I remember telling our players, Servite had to beat Santa Margarita. And John Lally was pitching for Santa Margarita, who was a good pitcher at SM. And he just didn't. He was committed to go to LMU. It just didn't have his best game at that time. And Servite had beat them. Well, we had the night game at Mater Dei, and we had to beat Mater Dei or SM had to lose. Well, SM lost. So that catapulted us into third. That game didn't matter. I told our boys prior to them taking pregame, which is one of my bigger coaching mistakes, because we played horrible that game. But I remember the elation from them, and I remember Quinn Renner's face running out to shortstop because I felt like they wanted it too finally, and the parents wanted it. And we go into the playoffs, and I remember being a total mess. I had forgot all my scouting reports. I was just coaching on a whim. And we had two pretty good guns on the mound, in Joe Karash and Graham Weiss, two of our better players. And we go out to ML King and we lose. We didn't play particularly great. It was howling. The wind was crazy. It was just, the stars didn't align for us. So we had lost the first round. The eventual champion that year was Simi Valley, who's Matt Orloff is a coach on my staff. He was on that team, the eventual winner. So, but I remember going in the right direction. And then 2009, we had Austin Hedges, who was a sophomore, who was actually the Trinity League MVP.
And if you don't know, Austin Hedges now the catcher for the San Diego Padres.
Cleveland Indians now.
Cleveland Indians now. Well, Cleveland Guardians now.
Cleveland Guardians, yeah. Let's do that.
There we go.
So Dylan Christensen, Brett Dawson, who works on this campus now, Joe Karash, Graham Weiss, Matt Paradise, Colton Playa, who was a huge part. He had played LMU, was on Team USA, played for the Mets a little bit. Scott Ely, Clay Williamson. We had these pieces of youth, sophomores and juniors and some seniors, and all a bunch of kids that kind of had that Fullerton mentality. The way they walked on the field. We beat teams on how they took pregame. Mm-hmm. And I reference this all the time about the 2009 team. How they took pregame intimidated other teams. I mean, they just took such pride in it. Their catch play was so important. And they just did things right. And we weren't the most talented. There was plenty of other teams. And I think we went 12-3 or 11-4, and we celebrated up at Santa Margarita. And I think we were 22-6 or 21-6. And we got the number 2 seed overall in the playoffs. And we had won our first playoff game. We beat Camarillo 3-2. And then we had gone up to Riverside Poly. We lost, I think, 5-3, which was Jake Marisnik and Greg Myers. And Marisnik's in the big leagues now. And Greg Myers, his dad was a big leaguer. And it was kind of our first game in a hostile environment. The point was, with that team, jubilation. I don't think they had said that they had arrived. They still were hungry for more. The fact that we lost was probably on me because I still have the ability to overmanage and overcoach at times. But there was a sense of, this is what we've done. We're the first major sport at JSerra to win a league championship. We want to help catapult not only this program, but catapult the school into a new era. And I enjoyed that responsibility. I enjoyed that passion from our players. I think we took on that persona, right, wrong, or indifferent. And we wanted to be a part of it for our school. And I think that's what kind of elevated the baseball program to start to do some really cool things and have special players like the Piazzas and the Hedges and the Paradises. I mean, I've bought, 10 cars from the Paradise family who's, and, I got a chance to see a lot of those kids at Austin Hedges' wedding 2 years ago. And for me, it was just a really proud moment, and to see them, they're all 30, 31, 32. But it was really a testament to the kids that I coached in 2007 and 2008, and even the kids before me that were kind of the grandfathers of the program, the Corey Conkes, the Joe Spazziris, the Toby Alderettis, the Anthony Williams, the guys like that had really kind of cut their teeth, with this program, taking a leap of faith. So 2009 was a special, special year. And I look at that picture, that's the one up there, and it was a really complete team, and it was a really special group. And, I call it what you will, I hang my hat on that team because they did a lot of special things for, I think, our program, but ultimately the school as well.
Yeah. And when you talk about kind of what, the wanting to do it for the school, you went on to have continued success. I mean, you win the Trinity League again in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2021. You make 12 CIF appearances. You guys have been ranked in the national top 10 5 times. What was it that you think attributed to your continued success then here at JSerra? Having the experience that you had and having the mentality that you had, you have built JSerra into now, a very nationally recognized high school program.
Good coaches, good players, good support from administration. It's taught me so much more. In the times of 2000, I didn't delegate anything. I thought I could do it all on my own. But good players make good coaches. If a coach tells you different, they're lying. We started to attract more players, and 2010 was a good team. We were a third-place team, and they were 21-9 at one point, and really good. I mean, 20 games is in Orange County is a kind of a goal that you have, and we had beat the number 1 seed out of the Southwestern League, Great Oak, in a phenomenal game, and we had lost to San Clemente in 2011. We played Great Oak again and played a 14-inning game and beat them 1-0, and we lost in the second round to JW North and got 1 hit. So the stigma was that we were starting to elevate ourselves, but we couldn't get past. And I get hit on this by anonymous people all the time on social media trolls on having all these good teams, but not, having a culmination of winning a CIF championship, which is hurtful to a certain degree, but, because I listen to that stuff. But we were starting to attract players. And like I said, 10 was good, 11 was good. 12 was when we started. 12 and 13, we struggled. We were not what we needed to be. We had some kind of internal friction between not so much the coaches. Like, we had players that didn't really buy into what, those teams in the past had. And so I was fighting myself, and, we were fighting the players, and, going through a tougher time on how to navigate this high school baseball world. But in 13, I knew we had the pieces. I knew we were young. And then in 14, we exploded. And the Chase Strumps, the Parker Joe Robinsons, the Sam Cohens, Christian Molfettas, and all these players that we knew were a part of 14. And then we have guys like Royce Lewis who comes in, and he starts as a freshman with Davis Wenzel, and Davis Wenzel was a first rounder for Baylor. Royce was obviously the first pick overall in 2017. Chase was a second rounder for the Cubs. Brady Shockey was a Trinity League MVP. And we started to roll. And the kind of the aura had kicked itself back up in 15. Well, I thought we were a little bit too conceited, if you will. We go up to Hart in 15. We're number 1 in the nation. And they kicked our butts. We couldn't get off the field with 2 outs. It's kind of started my get off the field with 2 outs mantra. And I remember with Quentin Longery, who's, one of the best pitchers we've had here, we just gave up too many runs with 2 outs and simple baseball stuff. And they thundered us. And that was a huge upset, and the baseball kind of shocked the world. And so that one hurt. And then the 16 team came around, and we had to face Dana Hills and Hans Kraus, who was throwing 96-98, and beat them 3-0. And then we beat Loyola, I think, 5-2. And then here we go again. We're going to the quarterfinals, and guess where we have to go? We got to go back to the Hart. And I remember Royce and Chase and Shockey and those guys just said, "Get on my back." And I think we beat them like 14-2. Now we're in the CIF semifinals. We're farther than in 14 we went to the semis too. We lost to Foothill, who's been kind of a nemesis of ours. And Foothill beats us in 14. We're back in the CIF semifinals. We can't, and we're facing now Jared Halpert and Harvard Westlake. And besides, Jared's the one coach, and there's Coach Weber out of Cyprus and Borba out of Orlu, and, obviously the coaches in our league, Malik Mercado, Barbara, and Gilbert. But Halpert and I feel like really close friends, and it's the one program I probably respect the most on how they coach. So we've got to play them, and I think it's his first year or second year. And with kind of them, you kind of know what they're going to do. They're really good at what they do, and they're kind of Harry Welch in football. They run the same stuff, and they're just really good at it. And they have some creativity and some things. And we felt confident. We had some really special players with Royce and Colin Quinn on the mound, who was the Orange County Player of the Year, and 12-0 going into that game. And, I think we got one hit. I think Royce led off the game with a hit, steals second. We just strand them, and, we couldn't get over that hump. So we lose 2-0. And I remember that being the most successful year in our history of our program and from a school perspective. And being hurt, that I had, again, let myself down and let our players down and let our parents down and let the people around me down. I just didn't do a good enough job. And Jared has always hated me, Jared Halpert, because I tend to tweet after games sometimes, And I had tweeted in that year, and I tweeted in 17 and 18 that I felt like I let my players down. I should have done a better job, because I always feel like, the onus falls on me as the head coach. You want the players to take on a persona of you and your coaching staff, but ultimately it comes down to you as the head coach. And, people aren't going to let you forget that. And me being the competitive prick I am, I'm not going to forget that. And so 16 was tough. 17 was even tougher. I mean, we had Royce. We had lost all these players from 16. We had Royce and Colin Towns and Cole Samuels and some good little pieces, but we made the playoffs, which we really didn't have a lot of business making the playoffs. We lost in the first round of Foothill. I tried to squeeze with Joey Basone, after Vince Brown had gone out and done a mound visit, and thought we had the pieces there. So we lose 9-8. So Royce is done. He gets obviously the first pick overall. So that was a fantastic summer. Well, 2018, we're beating Etowanda, 4-1 in the sixth inning. And, our freshman second baseman and he'll get mad at me if he listens to this, kind of I think it's an error that catapulted them to tie the game 4-4, and then we give up a walk-off grand slam in the first round of 2018. Fast forward to 2019, we got Gage Jump on the mound as a sophomore, and he's no-hitting Miracosta. And I pull him out after his 96 pitch or whatever it was, and I think we were up 2-0 at that time, and we end up losing 3-2 in a snap of a finger. Dylan Dennis hit a double out down the left field line. I remember turning to my coaches to ask what had just happened. So those 3 years were devastating. 17, 18, 19. First round losses, the elevation of JSerra can't win a big one. That's starting to swirl. I'm starting to listen. And then 20 comes around, and you have a really special team. And COVID hits. We're 11-1. We're number one in the state. We feel like we had just beaten Huntington Beach, I think 3 times in a row. Who Benji is, add Benji to that list, how fantastic he and his program is. And COVID hit. So, giving that conversation and the season being over and all the things that kind of went through that. And then 21 hits. And again, I apologize for being long-winded. Not knowing what you're going to have, the season starting a month later, and being number 2 in the nation to start, Eric Silva, Gage Jump, Cody Schreier, Luke Jewett, Gabe Darcy, Colin Blanchard, all these commits. I think we had 11 commits. David Horn, arrives, and just, what that team taught me was stay far away, meaning trust your players, let them run, let your horses run. And so I felt like last year I didn't coach a lot. I didn't need to put my finger on any things. I remember yelling at Cody. He's been a 4-year starter and one of the best players we've ever had. At a Servite game in an air, and he goes, "Coach, I got it. You don't have to yell at me. I got it. I'm already pissed at myself." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." And so that team, number 2 in the nation, but they started off 4-5. We lost, some games that we shouldn't have lost to. So at one point, I pulled all the starters, and all the guys came in, and I felt like our first 9 and our second 9 was just as good as our first 9. So it was hard for me to navigate that world too. And lo and behold, they win that game. They beat Miracosta, and then we kind of meshed everything back together, and I think we won 18 in a row. maybe 19 in a row. We had thrown 3 no-hitters. We had broken 11 school records. And then we go into the Orange Lutheran series and we lose game 1, like 8-3. They thundered us. And Gage gets on the mound. And Gage is the best pitcher we've ever seen. And just phenomenal. And Gage goes up to Hart Park on Orange Lutheran and wins that series. I mean, not wins that series, but he shuts down Olu. We win 2-0. And then game 3 is by far and away the best atmosphere I've ever seen from a high school game. Orange Lutheran at JSerra, game 3, Eric Silva versus Chris Canada. And I don't even know what the score was, 3-1 maybe, 2-1. Gabe Darcy had the biggest at-bat and hit in his career. Silva had thrown a complete game. And winning the league championship for the 5th time out of 15 years, so a third of the time was. But it's with this team, it was like the 9 team, like we weren't done, and we had actually a bye in the first round of CIF playoffs, and we played Capel Valley, which is a mile up the street, and we no-hit them. So we have Ukaipa in the quarterfinals. Well, Ukaipa's head coach was the head coach before me here, so it was a little bit personal for him. It wasn't, I didn't do anything, but I think he doesn't have a real love lost for JSerra, but he's a phenomenal coach in his own right and done some great things with that program. They get super dudes up there. And so we beat them 7-1. We scored 6 in like the 5th. It was a really close ball game. So now we're in the semifinals. We're on the road. We go to Ayala, and we've got Gage on the mound. We're confident. He's the best pitcher we've ever seen. He's up to 94, 96 with a devastating breaking ball. And we score 3 in the first. Well, normally when you score 3 in the first with Gage, you're done. Mm-hmm. Game's over. And you never think that as a coach, but I know that's what they were thinking. Well, what does Ayala do? They scored 4, off Gage, which had given up 1 earned run all year. And so we're in a dogfight. And so we had tied it at 4. Luke Jewett hit a home run, and then we exploded for, I think, 7 runs in the 6th inning to go up 11-4. And they had scored 3 in the 7th, which made it, I had to bring in Silva, who ended up being our CIF championship starter, and to close the door, I think we went 11-7. So now we're in the CIF championship. And we're playing at my old stomping grounds, Cal State Fullerton. We're playing Jared Halpert and Harvard Westlake. And, we had played them 3 or 4 times in the winter. And I had told our boys, like, hey, these are the things that we're going to need to do to be successful. And we didn't do it. I didn't do a good enough job of preparing them. But again, I felt like these guys are old. They can handle it. They know what they're doing. And they one-hit us. And they beat us 2-0. And devastating. To say the least. That was devastating. But we had this new format of the CIF SoCal Regional, and some teams had opted out, Harvard Westlake being one of them. But we had Orange Lutheran and Ayala and Liberty, and we beat Liberty 10-0. We run-ruled them. Now we got to face Orange Lutheran for the 4th time. And at this point in time, we are in June. School has graduated. We are out. These kids can grow beards, whatever they want to do. School's not going to bust them. But we wanted to keep coaching them, and they wanted to keep playing. And we beat Olu. We went staff day. Again, some players, have opted out. And we went with the guys that we had, which were most of our starters. And we beat Olu. And then we got to play Ayala again. It's the last game of the season. It's June 26th. I'm already doing my youth camps and my incoming freshman camps. And we win, I think, 5-1 or something like that. And it was a surreal moment because there was no dog pile. It was just hugs and love of a special unit and a special team and a CIF SoCal championship banner. Granted, it wasn't the one we really wanted, but it was still, for me personally, it was like, you know what? I can still do this. I can handle this. This is, maybe for the naysayers out there, but this is for the players that, from the kids that were before I was here to the kids that were here for 15 years. This is for everybody, and it was joy for my children to watch it and joy for my wife, who's been such a rock star. And it was just a really, really special moment. And sorry, that was probably 13 minutes long.
You don't have to apologize. I think that's one of the nice things about the podcast is we can get these stories that we probably wouldn't otherwise get. I mean, that's amazing to hear. I mean, 2021 winning the Southern California Regional Championship. Now we're heading into the 2022 season. As we wind down, there's a question that I ask everyone that comes on the show, which is, for you personally, what has sports done for you in your life, and what has sports meant to you?
That's a really good question. It's everything to me. I mean, I can't do anything else. And You look at the outside world, and there's so many things that sports do on so many different levels. And to give you an example, I created a 9 and 10-year-old team to coach my own son. And my son, he's now 9, but my 8-year-old son tore his ACL in September, which is very rare for that age. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't continue to coach these kids. I need to focus on my son. But on the flip side of that was like, I have to continue to coach these kids because I need to show them how important they are to me. And I want to be a role model and a mentor for these kids, whether I get them for a season or whatever it is. And I want to be able to make a change and a difference in their lives. And, so when you put all that stuff in, and I'm going to give you some bad cliches and analogies here in a second. But when I work out and run, I do the Peloton stuff. Mm-hmm. And I always think it's interesting because those people have the platform to change the world, to change the fitness era, but I translate that into our world as high school coaches or coaches in general, that we have the platform to change the world as well through so many teachable moments. And the maturation process in high school from 14 to 18 is so huge that we have that same platform. Now, sometimes we take it for granted. Sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes we have to really learn how to balance our life. I'm married and have 2 children, and the difference between right and wrong. And sometimes the line begins to blur where you teeter on those lines. But again, any of us, whether they're coaches, administrators, teachers, you have, and we have, and whatever your role is in life, you have a platform to change the world. And that's what sports has taught me. And that's why I started off with saying, like, I don't want to be behind a computer. I don't want to sell, this or that, or, I want to be able to be, with student athletes, trying to change the world, trying to change their view on life and how they treat women and how they open doors for girls on a date, or, how they ask them to homecoming, or, what they're doing on a Saturday night, how they talk to their parents. All that stuff matters, because if you have little wins in life that take you throughout your day, little wins, by the time you wake up, all those things will gravitate towards big things, and you'll start to see change in who you are as an individual, and then ultimately as a student athlete in, baseball, football, basketball, whatever it is.
Awesome. Very well said. Well, Coach Brett Kaye, JSerra High School, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or anywhere else you guys get your podcast, thank you for those of you who are watching on YouTube. If you guys want to check us out, we're on Instagram at Cannon Sports. We are on TikTok at Cannon Sports Official. We are on YouTube /Cannon Sports Media, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.